Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is Tap Nuo, and I'm a minimal techno artist from Los Angeles. Today I'll be doing a breakdown on how I made the record on my fifth cup of tea. This is available now on my new album, Fake Techno. I'll put the link for that in the description. And thank you so much to everyone who's been supporting the album, supporting my music, and supporting this channel, liking and subscribing and commenting. So let's go ahead and hear what we got today, what we'll be working on. As you can see, it's a really progressive record. It's more on the progressive side of the minimal spectrum. It's something that works great for like a desert party, sunrise kind of set, as well as just an at-home and headphones listen. I wanted to make something really chill to balance out the track listing of the album. And I don't normally make stuff that's as like chill as this stuff, I guess, but it just felt right. It felt like something that would really complement the rest of the record. And I started out just with some drums, so let's go ahead and hear all those. I won't really dive too much into the drums, just because it's really simple, and it's something that I made these drums and then I mixed it analog as you know. The whole record and the whole album I did on an API console. So what you're hearing today is just the actual writing of the record. The whole mixdown was done in the studio, but the mixdown is just complementing what already exists. We're not really adding anything. And the drums, if I go through, are just, you know, it's just the kick drum is just the drum synth, which is a setting that I dialed in myself. And I added some overdrive as well as the decapitator plugin. I don't know if that wants to load, but that's a Soundtoys plugin, which is essentially just some further distortion, further color that you can blend in nicely and really complement the existing kick. Now, that is also playing with some toms. And I live in downtown LA, so if you hear some sirens in the background, just ignore those because they're nonstop. Those toms are playing alongside the kick. Minimal techno is all about space, and you don't want to have the gaps too filled in because you need room for things to breathe. You need room for the rhythm to be able to bounce, especially if you want that sort of rolling rhythm. So those toms are just coming from Ultra Beat as well as drum synth, which is it's just a kick drum preset that I tuned, but you can use a kick drum as a tom if you place it right and if you mix it right. And that has a little bit of color coming from the Radiator plugin, which is another Soundtoys plugin. And then I have some snares, which are just different layers that really play nice together. Again, those are pretty straightforward. It's just the Ultra Beat and then the drum synth and then an actual loop from the Logic loop library, which was layered in pretty low. As you can see, it's at -16. So it's just complementing those two snares and filling out the frequency spectrum. And then I have some hi-hats, which are coming from the Ultra Beat plugin. And when I added those in, there's just some modulation in terms of the velocity to give, you know, more of a shuffled, loose feel to the hi-hats. And the first hi-hat has Crystallizer on it, which is a Soundtoys plugin that has this cool like recycle feature. And it added like almost like a response to the hi-hat. So if I take that off, and that's present throughout the whole record. And it fills out some frequency range that the other hi-hats did not. And I thought it sounded great. And I just was tweaking different settings in Crystallizer, so I kept that in. Next, we have the Perk Atmos. Oh, I should also note these other hi-hats, same kind of situation where there's just different modulation. with both some of them have swing on them and just, of course, velocity modulation. Perk Atmos is going to sound like this. So if I take off all those plugins, it's going to sound like this. So it's just like a percussion sound that didn't really fit dry. So once I added things such as the tape delay and whatnot, and the primal tap and echo boy, it really just extended the sound and filled out some space that I was trying to fill out, which also worked really well with these other atmospheric sounds. And those atmospheric sounds are the result of different samples that were layered together. So I took a sound from the loop library and then Paul stretched it in Audacity. Paul stretch is just something that basically takes a sample and you can put the extendo on it, I guess. You can make it really long and it won't have too many artifacts. It's really great for sound design and especially atmospheric type of sounds. Actually, I should move this arp sign effects underneath because I'll get to that. It kind of plays off the lead arpeggiator. And then the main effects. So that's another thing where it was just, if I open some of these hidden tracks, it was different samples that were layered together with Soundtoys plugins processing on them. And then when I got to the studio, this actual sound, it had some really high frequency content that was super sharp that needed taming. So all I did was just do things like that and sweep out certain frequencies. Again, you know, when it came to do the actual mix down, it wasn't too complicated. It was just taking the initial idea and just enhancing it. So I have a sine arpeggiator, and this plays throughout the whole record, and it doesn't really change. It stays constant. And it has a little turnaround, you know, when you get to the end of the loop. And all that is, it's just the sampler at the most stock setting. It's literally just a sine wave with, you know, some filter modulation and some drive on the filter. And that was something that I wanted to keep playing consistent. I thought about opening up, you know, the cutoff a little bit, but I ended up just keeping it there because there were other melodic parts that were filling out different parts of the frequency spectrum. So that lead arp sign is then taken with all those notes muted, and then just at the end for like a turnaround, I have them open and there's different effects such as crystallizer and some reverb, which makes it sound like this. So it just plays off of the existing arp and it really complements that sound. And it doesn't come in too often. It just comes in, I think, every like 32 or 64 bars. So already we've got a great foundation for the record, and let's go ahead and listen to everything I've just discussed. And of course, that's cool on its own, but it's not really a whole song. You know, that's just more of a little loop, a little groove that is a great foundation to then add some chords to. So I drew in these chords. I just wrote in, I tried different things that I liked and eventually ended up with this pattern for chords. And there's a couple instruments playing the same pattern. So we have a pad. And that's playing pretty low. And that's just occupying the really higher frequency spectrum. That's also playing alongside this Vox pad. I should note the pad 1, it's just Alchemy. It's just a setting in Alchemy that I tweaked a little bit, as well as some EQ cutting off most of the sound and just keeping the top frequencies. Vox pad is another Alchemy setting. Just going through different settings in Alchemy and seeing what worked. has a really cool, like ethereal, really chill sound, and that's what I was going for. And this Vox Pad 2 really filled the rest of the frequency spectrum out. From analog processing. And that's kind of the secret to my sound is analog processing. And I will do some further videos in the future on how I approach that when I have more music to mix in the studio. Stay tuned for more music. So those combined with the kick, you can hear, and I mean, not the kick, the drums, you can hear we have really a great foundation going for this record. And then just started to make an arrangement, and that's why you have certain clips muted. I just basically made, what is that, 160 bars, 161 bars, and then just muted things and added a breakdown, added an intro, and that gave plenty of room to add a bass sound because it needed something to keep that groove going and to keep that groove interesting. So I have a Moog synthesizer. I have a Mother 32, and I actually just recorded into this project and kind of played it in real time. So I had a patch going in the Mother 32, which if I take off all the processing, let's see what that sounds like. And if I open up the hidden tracks, yeah, so I wrote in some MIDI for the bass line, and that's just going into the Mother 32. And then I started to add processing. So I added a compressor, which I believe is a sidechain compressor. Yes, so that's sidechained. And then decapitator, as well as some EQ. The CQ, which is a Soundtoys plugin, it just adds some further color. It's a different type of EQ than your normal EQ. Filter Freak, channel EQ, and then Filter Freak, which I don't know if that one wants to load. But Filter Freak is just adding further modulation. It's a great way to, add color and keep sounds moving. So that definitely dirtied it up a little bit. And then the step effects, I don't think those are on. So I kept those off because then I duplicated that track. And I should note that the actual recording itself is mono, and then I converted it into a stereo track and kept some of the same processing, but I added the step effects. So that on its own. That on its own, it sits higher in the frequency spectrum, and it really complements the existing bass because it's the same thing. It's just a different processing on it. As well as some stereo spread to just widen it further. And what I should note too is on the bass, the lower part of the Moog, I kept one part of the recording, and then I had different sections, different takes of the recording that I ended up using just for that processed version of the sound. So like if you get to the end of the record, the synthesizer really starts to talk more. And if I take off all the processing, you'll hear the raw synthesizer. So that's kind of the main basis of the track. And then other than that, I have this little arpeggiator, which is from the Apple library. And normally I would write in a synthesizer and write some more MIDI, but every once in a while you'll be going through different sounds that are already available and they just fit the record. And I didn't really want to fight the flow. I thought it would really complement things, really fill out that last third of the track. And so I just put it in there. I just threw it, until basically until the mix out. And the only thing that's going on for that is some automation in terms of the actual cutoff. So it starts out more filtered. and then it just opens up. And yeah, it's actually remarkably simple, this record. And that's kind of my approach, is simple but effective and only using what's absolutely necessary. I guess that sort of fits to the minimal theme. But yeah, let's just hear everything together. So that's how I made the track. It's remarkably simple. Normally I don't take that simple of an approach, but for, sometimes tracks, it just works out that way. And I'll be doing further Logic tutorials, breaking down other tracks on the album. There's some other Pro Tools tutorials that I've got coming up, and then of course DJ mixes. So thank you so much for subscribing and liking and commenting on this video. I'll see you guys next week.